Belgium won, 0 Canada. This was actually quite an exciting game, wasn't it, Seb? It was very end-to-end.
I enjoyed it. I think it was probably a good game for maybe an hour, and then it got a little bit ragged. And I think we certainly saw the best of Canada in the first 45 minutes. We saw them very dynamic, creating a lot of chances. I think the last time I checked, they had about 24 shots in the game, which is remarkable. Never quite produced that one chance they needed to unlock the Belgian defence. But it was, we were talking a lot about the defence that Roberto Martinez sent out to face the Canadians' pace, and it was a combined age of about 300.
Yeah.
But actually they did pretty well. Between them, Alderweireld, Vertonghen and Leander Dendoncker. They have their limitations, and there are clearly vulnerabilities with those three players, yes. But given those and accepting that, I think they did quite well individually. Yeah. And JJ made a very pertinent point towards the end of the game. First yard is in the head, and I think that's kind of
indeed,
the mantra for the evening.
Let's talk about that, because of course, but Belgium's golden generation is perhaps coming to an end. JJ, Hazard, Alderweireld, Vertonghen, as Seb mentioned, there some aging players. They've one might look at that and say, well, you've maybe missed your chance. What do you think about that?
Well, the thing with Belgium's golden generation is that they've had loads of good players who haven't all been at their peak at the same time.
Yeah.
So when you think you had Alderweireld and Vertonghen were about 27, 10 years ago, that was when they were at their peak.
Yeah.
And other players, I know how time works and years. But now you have, unfortunately, Lukaku's now, he's sort of injured. He definitely is injured, that's why he's not playing. But other players, I can't think of any of the other ones who are now not playing anymore. Dries Mertens is not, because he's a bit older.
He's in his 30s now, yeah.
Exactly, he's like 35 or something, mid 36. But then basically you've got players who relied on their pace, not relied, but made use of it, now aren't as fast as they once were.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's players, they have good players in that team. And the team today, I mean, Eden Hazard hasn't played hardly at all in the Liga for Real since he moved there. He just can't get out of these injury problems that he's got. So he was taken off having done mostly nothing. De Bruyne was the best player on the pitch for them by miles, I would have said. But they're missing players. I mean, Courtois is obviously a very good player. What they're really missing is younger centre-backs, maybe to give them some pace. They don't have a lot of pace up top either. So, Batshuayi scored a goal by a long ball, just punted up from the goalkeeper in behind the high line of Canada. But they're missing... Yeah, what I'm trying to say basically is they've not all had the best players around at the same time.
Yeah.
So, and it now seems to be like the real key ones are moving on now. You've got players on the bench that could come through, like I can never say his name right, De Ketelaere,
I think, is...
De Ketelaere.
Yeah, De Lara.
Charles De Ketelaere.
Yeah. Yes, that's the one. And Leandro Trossard, he's not young though, is he? He's like 25. 26.
Yeah, I mean, he's in his mid-20s. He's in his prime, though.
He's in his form age.
He sure is.
Yeah.
He sure is.
You've got Count Dooku from Star Wars on the bench. You can come on.
You know what's remarkable is that a country of 11 million people produced a gold generation in the first place. Yeah. And actually, like even before, Belgium produced good players. Sort of Mark Wilmots, going back a little bit further, Enzo Schifo, Michael Prudhomme was one of the great goalkeepers of the 1980s. Like, it's an amazing thing, and like we've kind of, they're so far in that dark horse territory now, Belgium, that we kind of, it's almost become a cliche. But it's like, it's not quite Uruguay, but it's pretty remarkable.
I think that's true, because if you think like
they won this tournament because they're not quite there.
Yeah,
and you saw it today. Like there's a lot of distance between the defence and the forward line. They don't really control games the way they're supposed to, and teams have worked out like Canada. If you press them, then you can get joy out of them. They still control games in qualifying. They're still good in qualifying, and they are still good. That's the thing, but they're just not. There's just something lacking there, and I wonder. They seem like a very Roberto Martinez team. Do you know? Like they can play really well between the boxes. They've got good finishers when they can score goals, but there's something. I don't know what it is.
There's a vulnerability to Roberto Martinez's football, which has always been there. Like when you dive beyond the kind of the superficial glossiness and the talent, there's always a slight vulnerability somewhere to be found, and there's a kind of not a shakiness. Maybe that's a bit unfair, but there's something that there's a fragility.
Here's a question to put to you from Mad Intellect in the chat. In terms of Belgium's golden generation, apart from 2 or 3 players, says Mad Intellect, which I assume we're talking about Lukaku, De Bruyne, Alderweireld, etc. The rest are so overrated, says this person. What do you make of that?
I think that's a little bit harsh, because I think when you have a generation where you create genuinely exceptional players, De Bruyne has been an exceptional player, Alderweireld has been, Vertonghen has been, I would say that Witsel for a long time was too. You kind of cast a shadow on some of the others, and you forget how good a player someone like, for instance, Yannick Carrasco is. I know he never quite got to the top of European football, but he's played around that level for a very long time. And also, think about guys like Marouane Fellaini. I know he got pilloried and he was a little bit of a punchline during Jose Mourinho's time at Manchester United, but still a very, very good player. And in people like Thomas Vermaelen, Jason Denayer, Thibaut Courtois, Simon Mignolet,
Vincent Kompany,
Christian Benteke, Vincent Kompany is a great example. Like, there's been a lot of really good players.
But then, and Martinez has this thing where he likes to play players in certain positions so he can get his best players in because it makes sense on paper. But there's always vulnerabilities to those. When they actually play, like Dendoncker tonight, I mean, fine, because the whole back line was in trouble because of Canada. He's played centre back before. I think you were saying for Wolves, but I've only ever seen him play centre mid.
It's kind of an emergency
exactly. He's not a central defender in the same way that Sergio Busquets isn't.
No,
they're different players, to be clear. Yeah. But I mean, you look at the 2018 team that Belgium had when they were called like the dark horses of the World Cup. Actually, they were one of the best teams in it.
Yeah,
and that like the team went back from goalkeeper onwards. Courtois, so he's obviously one of the best goalkeepers in the world today. He was good then. Kompany, one of the best defenders that Belgium will ever have, one of the best players in Europe at the time. Alderweireld, key player. Vertonghen played alongside him at left back. He can tuck in because then he had Hazard at his peak on the left.
Thomas Meunier?
No, it was Nasser Chadli. He was playing in the semi-final against France.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Then you had like Moussa Dembele, who was excellent. He was such an underrated player. He was underrated. Fellaini, sure enough. Yeah, and then De Bruyne playing off other places. Basically, they had a really good team. They really did. And they got to the semi-final of the World Cup in 2018. So it's not like they underperformed. I think for them to reach there, the size of Belgium, is it bigger than Scotland? Is it smaller?
Yeah, it's 11 million people. And also, look at the teams.
How many you got in Scotland?
I don't know. I think it's maybe 5.
If you go back through those tournaments,
just 5 people.
yeah.
Look at the team. That's
2 of them work
Belgium
here.
Out. Like the Belgium golden generation have lost to some of the a succession of teams who have gone on to win tournaments in which they've been taking part. So it's not like they've done in England and underperformed consistently, sort of lost in 2014, lost in 2016. They've lost to really, really good sides and by narrow margins too.
5 million in Scotland, we say. So theoretically, you should have at least half of one Kevin De Bruyne.
Well, we've got Andrew Robertson, Kieran Tierney.
Yeah.
Nathan Patterson and Calvin Ramsey. These are all fullbacks.
You like the fullbacks
you
in
love
Scotland,
a fullback
don't you?
in Scotland.
Yeah, and I think that's Callum McGregor's quite good. That's it.
Yeah.
Any other good ones? That's all I need.
Maybe you need Roberto Martinez. How about that? There was another comment in the chat about Roberto Martinez, someone suggesting that Roberto Martinez has wasted Belgium's golden generation. I mean, do you think that you just mentioned they're getting to semi-final in 2018 is a great achievement for
well, the
team
players they
that comes
have
from
should
a country
maybe done
that
that,
size.
but like to sort of assume what the question might be there, like have they actually wasted it? I think teams who tend to win tournaments tend to play tournament football, so they play what Karl Anka calls suffer ball, where you play to beat teams in transition or off mistakes, and you're very defensive.
Yeah,
Belgium are defensive in possession, like they control games by keeping the ball, but I think they don't try and play in transition and exploit errors that the opposition makes.
Yeah,
which is maybe where they might have fallen short. I can't remember how they played in that tournament now, so I might be making this up. But that's why I think their Martinez team is they are very pretty, keep the ball, all very nice, but they don't maybe exploit the opponent, and that's sometimes what gets you the edge. I mean, I think we were talking about Belgium an awful lot, but I mean, Canada really took.
Well, I do. I mean, I want to talk about Canada because I thought they were certainly in the first half. They were very, very exciting. They were great to watch. It's a tough group for Canada to be in because obviously we talk about Belgium reaching a semi-final in 2018. Croatia did too, and they're also in this group. And Morocco are not an easy team to beat. We also spoke about Belgium's golden generation potentially coming to an end. Seb, Canada, on the other hand, are sort of coming into a nice new generation of their own, as part of which they have at least one, capital letters star player in Alphonso Davies, but also Jonathan David, Steven Eustáquio. I mean, like they've got a nice team, and they unsettled Belgium regularly in this game.
Yeah, I think what's good about this Spanish team, this Canadian team, is in the past, like they've always been the odd Canadian player. So someone like Jonathan de Guzman, for instance, or going back a bit further, Thomas Rosiński. You remember the old Everton centre forward? I think he also spent some time at Fulham. Now, and I think as we watched it together, all of us were kind of taken by a couple of players that we hadn't really seen before. You've mentioned Steven Eustáquio. I think Buchanan looks a really good player.
Yeah.
He plays for Club Brugge in Belgium. Miller at centre back looked really excellent. I really enjoyed watching him. He looked
excellent in
a proper old school centre half sort of way. He was it was really kind of a bold performance. It was very proactive, I thought, as well. And when you have a group of players together like that, you have an opportunity. And I suppose what I will say is, like, I'll be interested to see how Canada fare in the other two games in this group, because it always felt like this game, with the attributes that they have, and now whatever else Canada have, they have pace. And they have pace in a lot of these attacking positions, and that matched up really nicely with some of Belgium's deficiencies. I don't quite know why Roberto Martinez has decided not to kind of to generate a new defence for this generation, and is stuck for so long with players who have kind of faded from the European scene a little bit. Alderweireld and Vertonghen clearly have kind of, I think they're both back playing in Belgium now. Vertonghen left Benfica about 6 months ago, so I think they're both there. And clearly their best days are a long way behind them. And so you could see this coming. We said this morning, actually, like, you've got, first of all, you've got the adrenaline of the first game in a World Cup for nearly 40 years. Canada haven't been to a World Cup since '86. You've got the kind of, it very much seemed like Canada had the majority of the crowd. Certainly the neutral support too.
I love the VAR chants.
The VAR
that was cool.
chant. So basically what I'm saying is conditions were kind of aligned for them to perform, and they were great for a long period of time. But I don't know how well this team is going to hold up to examinations that are coming in the next few days. So
I mean, they were really good, though. They were frustrating, I found them to watch, because they created so many opportunities. I would expect their XG would be fairly high for the game, even though I spent a long time with John yesterday talking about how single game XG is a complete waste of time.
Yeah. And
I know someone who will get upset with me for bringing that up. But anyway, they created a lot of chances. They just didn't finish them. I mean, to be fair, that applies to both teams. It felt like this game could have had a lot more goals in it because of how open it was. What do you think of Canada, JJ?
Well, I think what we saw with Belgium is that a lot of players who are getting slightly older and aren't very athletic, but do play, like, they're very clever players. I mean, Vertonghen and Alderweireld are still clever players. Witzel's a clever player, but they're slow. Yeah. Whereas Canada have a team basically of athletes. They're really quick. Like Hoylett, David, Buchanan, Davies, all super quick, box to box. And then what you had, I think Canada are decent. I like that they've got this generation. So like Jonathan David, Alphonso Davies are two of the best players they've really probably ever had. And this Eustachio, really impressed with this guy.
He was great.
Didn't know much about him before today.
Nothing about him at all.
And now we've looked into him, and I think he's brilliant.
Yeah.
But they did this thing that was really brave against Belgium. I'll try and show you on the board. If you're watching on the live stream, you'll see this. Podcast listeners can't. But what Belgium ended up doing was having their back three with Axel Witsel was kind of on his own in midfield, because Tielemans would push up maybe a little bit further. But Canada were really aggressive, and they pushed players up super high really early, to the point they almost had no midfield. So they're trying to pin back these Belgian wing-backs. And Alphonso Davies was starting on as a left wing-back, but he was coming aside an awful lot and helping swap with Hoylett up front, things like that. Lots of rotations. But then you had Eustachio was a bit further forward as well, helping to keep them involved. Hutchison was not far off him. Let's draw a line, don't need to draw. But it basically left the back three quite isolated. So there's just no midfield as of, you can't really see a midfield in Canada's team. And it's like, you don't need to have one. But it's what Canada did well with this is aggressive and forced them back. And Belgium struggled to play out. But like we saw with Argentina and Saudi Arabia yesterday, the big thing for me was that for a long time what Argentina had was similar to this. They had no midfield. They basically had Messi on his own outside a front line of about 6 players. Got the wrong team here, but basically one guy on his own with a front line of about 5 or 6, and then players really deep. So they couldn't apply any pressure and keep sustained pressure up, because as soon as they lost the ball, the opposition could ping it up the pitch, and then you'd have to build slowly again and get it back up to these wide areas. But Canada didn't mind that, because the ball came back to them, and then they were just able to slow it down, pass from side to side with the bunks to centre backs. Belgium would slowly push up, which then creates that high line in behind, and then they can pump the ball over the top for someone like David or Davies or Hoylett to get in behind. It was really clever. Tactically, they were really interesting.
I mean, you kind of made the point during the game that, game changers change games. That's a stupid thing to say. That's not what you said.
I didn't say that. To
no,
be clear.
I said that, and that's
Joe
stupid.
said that.
But Batshuayi, for like a relatively average performance throughout the game, he took the opportunity when it came and scored a good goal. And Canada's forwards didn't do that, even though I think they probably created more chances.
Well, I think Canada were much better, athletically, physically. They were faster, they had more energy, they had more aggression, but they made the wrong decisions. Not to say their technique wasn't good. I mean, some of the stuff Davies was doing especially, and Eustachio in the middle of the pitch was excellent technically, but they were making the wrong decisions, whereas I think Belgium mostly made the right decision. Just the technique let them down almost sometimes.
Yeah, that one De Bruyne pass aside when they were in on goal, and there was I think it was might have been Tielemans to the right. Available. It might be the other way around.
I remember it was like he ran from like sort of deep, ran through, and then he had a player, I think maybe Castagna, and the free,
that's
completely free on the right.
Yeah.
And he couldn't get through to him. Yeah, I mean, he probably should have made that pass. But then, but Batshuayi is a tricky player to analyse because he is often in the right position and makes the right runs, but then doesn't. It's very frustrating. And like you saw the chance that he missed in the box. So De Bruyne teed him up with a ball that went across the box, and he had space and time because he'd made a clever run right to the edge of the box, a high XG value shot, but he waits for it to come to him. He almost doesn't trust that he needs to rush it. Then the defender gets in, slides in and blocks it and celebrates because he gets blocked when he should definitely have gone towards the ball. You move towards the ball, you can't just wait in that situation. But it's like he's aware at all points apart from when he's in the box and needs to. It's like that's when things become blurry to him. Everything else, he's quite clear. His movements are good. He makes like pre-movements before he makes a movement, so he'll send the defender one way before he goes and makes a space.
I think what's confusing about him is that every now and again he has a hot spell in his career. So if you remember when he went to Dortmund on loan when he was still at Chelsea in the Bundesliga, and he had a really good, I think about 6 months when he was pretty prolific. He was okay for Palace, for instance. He had not such a bad time in Turkey either. And so it's very confusing. You don't quite know how to evaluate him as a forward. And then when you see a moment like that, inevitably you compare him to Lukaku. I think we were saying towards the end of the game, if Lukaku was fit and if Lukaku was in the form that he was in 2.5 years ago, this looks very different, I think.
The space in behind for De Bruyne and Lukaku would have
100%.
been a 3-0 game probably.
Yes, exactly.
If you liked today's video, please consider subscribing to the channel. And if you did like it, you might be interested in How to Watch Football, Tifo's illustrated book. It's 52 rules for understanding the beautiful game on and off the pitch, and it is the perfect holiday gift. How to Watch Football is out now in stores and online. See the link in the description to find out more, and thank you for watching today's video.